Hello, everybody. Welcome to Voices Big and Small. And on this episode, we're going to be looking at the voice acting career of Dallas-based voice actress Cynthia Cranz. Most most well known for, of course, providing the English voice of Chi-Chi on the Funimation dubs of the Dragon Ball franchise, as well as Botan in Funimation's dub of Yu Yu Hakusho, Mitch Tennyson and the English dub of Case Closed, Mitzi Nohara in the Funimation dub of Chin Chan. So without no further ado, let's take a little deeper look at Miss Krantz here. Cynthia Jane Krantz, born March 3rd, 1969, is an American voice actress who worked for anime who who worked on anime series who worked on anime series at Funimation, Soundkeeted Studios, and Okatron 5000. As I said earlier, she is best known as a teenage adult voice of Chi-Chi from Dragon Ball, Botan from Yu Yu Hakusho. I also mentioned Mitch Tennyson and Mitch Tennyson from Case Closed, Mitzi Nohara from Shin Chan, and then of course she provided the English voice for Peepee in the episode 11A of Pop Team Epic. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and take a look over the roles she's done. Now, mind you, even though the source I'm using here says 95 and 96, especially for Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z franchises, what you have to understand is Funimation, I believe, got those licenses and actually was handling the dubbing and distributing of them in 2003. So, um, of course, Cynthia would provide the voice of Chi Chi throughout the Dragon Ball franchise, primarily for the teen and adult version. She also provided the English voice for Mrs. Brief, and then in Dragon Ball Z, she'd also, in one particular episode, was a female social worker. As we move ahead, she would, as I said, she would reprise her roles in a number of Dragon Ball franchise properties, including the Dead Zone movie, the Tree of Might. Let's see, originally coming out in 97, 98. Again, her work was probably as of 2003 on these. Um, Dragon Ball Z, the world's strongest 1998 movie. Again, I think for Funimation did their version in 2003. Also, Funimation's dub of Yu Yu Hakusho, the Golden Seal movie. She of course provided the voice of Botan. Of course, Funimation got the license for Yu Yu Hakusho in 2002, and then picked up the rest of the license for the movies much later. I think closer to now. So then in 2000, this is probably one of the first ones online. Well, she also reprised her role in the history of Trunks. Um, I'm gonna just skip all the unless there's something added here. Everybody knows that she was Chi-Chi in all the Dragon Ball movies, the teenage adult version. In Dragon Ball Mystical Adventure movie in 2000, she provided the English voice of Ancient Mai. Okay. As I mentioned, of course, 2002, she was casting as voice of Botan in Yu Yu Hakusho. Then also in 2002, in Lupin the Third: The Pursuit of Harumao's Treasure, she was casting English voice of Diana, the Funimation dub of that. Then also in 2002, in Fruits Basket, she was cast as English voices of Kisa's mother and me, Mii. She would, of course, reprise her role as Chi-Chi in the 2002 Dragon Ball Z Budokai video game. And then in In Dragon Ball Z Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan 2003 movie, she would reprise her role again as Chi-Chi, Mrs. Brief, and also would provide the vocalizations for Baby Broly. Also in 2003 in Super Android 13, she would reprise her role again as Chi-Chi. Dragon Ball GT. Basically, everybody here, I'm just gonna. I know I already said this, but I think I'll just skip. Everybody knows she's basically been in all the Dragon Ball franchise since Funimation picked up the. So those I'm gonna skip those, which would be a rarity, but everybody knows those. There's just so many that it'd become a little too repetitive if I kept saying every single role. So I'll only mention a Dragon Ball role if it's one of her lesser known roles or if it's a newer role. In 2004, she was cast in Kitty Grade as the English voice of the TV space media reporter. Also in 2004, when Funimation had the Case Closed license, of course, as I mentioned before, she would cast the English voice of Mitch Tennyson. Aside from that, she was also cast as the English voices of Angie Sebastian, um, the announcer for the Festival of Lights, Kimmy, Jasmine Kay, Audra Kelly, and Katie Mance, which I guess those were a bunch of other roles. I'm guessing Angie Sebastian might be Serena's. If I remember correctly, I don't. It might be her mother, Serena's mother, basically, which wouldn't surprise me because uh, you know Cynthia does get a lot of maternal roles. Basically gets a lot of roles where she's voicing the character of mothers. Um, then in One Piece, which of course Funimation picked up the license in 2004. Her primary role in One Piece is the English voice of Belmere. Aside from Belmere, of course, she also was casting English voices of Ririka, Onion, Miss Father's Day, and Roro Noah Zoro, or the young Zolo, basically. And also in 2004, in Full Metal Alchemist, she would be casting the voice of Panina. And then in Spiral, she was casting the English voice of Reiko Hatsuyama. Okay. She would, of course, reprise her role as Baby Broly in the Dragon Ball Z Broly Second Coming, the 2005 movie. Um, then also in 2005, she would be casting the voice of Mika in Burst Angel. And then also in 2005 in Gunslinger Girl, she would provide the English voice of Pharaoh. In Funimation's dub of Galaxy Railway, she would be cast as the English voices of Ine and Lisa. Then as we get into 2006, she would be cast as the English voice of the Dog Woman in Desert Punk. Um, also in 2006 in Trinity Blood, she was cast as the English voice of Lilith Saul. Then also in 2006 in Negima with the exclamation point, she was cast as the English voice of Feiku, student number 12. Also in 2006, she would be cast as English voice. Another one of her more well-known voice roles is Mitzi Nohara, the mother of Chin Nohara, also the Mama Kappa in an episode. And then in the movie Case Closed Time Bomb Skyscraper, for Funimation's dub of that, she would provide the English voice of Mitch Tennyson again. She would reprise that role. Yeah. Then as we move into 2007, she would provide the English voice of Karin in BTX. And then in the more episodic anime Mushishi, pretty surreal one, that's pretty interesting. She would be cast in the English voices of Biki's mother, Kai's aunt, Kisuke's sister, and Saku. And yes, you will hear on a number of occasions where she is either voicing the role of a mother or an older sister character. This is practically seems to be Cynthia's specialty. It's like kind of these elder, familial female characters, like women, like older sisters, mothers, and aunts. As we move on a bit here. Um, Also in 2007, in School Rumble, she would be casting as the voice of Hanai's mother. Hanai, I think, is a male protagonist. Or what? Actually, he's the one with the glasses. For those of you who don't know, School Rumble is kind of a slice of life school one involving a kind of a love triangle. Um, but in School Rumble, Cynthia Cranz would provide the English voice of Hanai's mother. Also in 2007, she would provide the English voice of Kyoko in Witchblade. And in Glass Fleet, she would provide the English voice of Mushcat. And in Herald Girl, another episodic anime, she would provide the English voices of Yoko and Ryoko's mother. And then she would, of course, reprise her role as Mitch Tenson in the Case Closed, the 14th Target movie. And then in the One Piece Unlimited Adventure video game in 2008, she would reprise her role as the English voice of Onion. Also in 2008, in Black Blood Brothers, she would be cast the English voice of Sayuka Shiramine. In the computer animated movie Vexile, she would provide the English voice for the Sword Communications officer. Then in One Piece, the Desert Princess and the Pirate's Adventures in Alabasta movie in 2008, she would reprise her role as Miss Father's Day. Also in 2008, in Ghost Hunt, she would provide the English voice of Noriko Morishita. And then in Negima exclamation point question mark summer, she would reprise her role in basically the summer and spring specials. She would reprise her role as Feiku student number 12 in both the spring and the summer adaptations of Negima. And then in also in 2008 Claymore, she would provide the English voice of Elena and also the awakened Rifui. Then in Darker Than Black, she would provide the English voice of Shizuka Isozaki. Then also in 2008, Negima with a question mark, she would of course reprise her role as Feiku, as well as being cast as the English voice of Kanoka's mother. Kanaga's mother. Then in Save Me Lollipop in 2009, she would be cast the English voice of the school nurse. Also in 2009, in The Gray Man, she would be cast the English voice of Sarah. In Romeo Juliet, with the X in between, and then from what I understand in Japanese culture, X is used kind of like a punctuation mark of some type. She would be cast as the English voices of Benvolio's mother and Hermione's mother. She would then reprise her role as the English voice of Pharaoh in Gunslinger Girl Il Piratino in 2009. Then in Big Wind Up, the baseball anime, she would provide the voice of Maria Momoe. Then in Kenichi, the mightiest disciple, she would provide the English voice of Saori Shirahama. Then in Dragonaut, the Resonance, she would provide the English voice of Shelley. She would be then cast as the English voice of Kirano's mother in Bamboo Blade. She would once again reprise her roles as Mitch Tennyson in the 2009 movies, Funimation dubbed of the movies Case Closed, The Last Wizard of the Century, and Case Closed, Captured in Her Eyes. Then in Reen, Daughters of Mnemosyne, in 2010, she would be cast as the English voice of Yoko. Also in 2010, she would be cast as the English voice of Shisato Hayase in Line Barrels of Iron, a mecha anime. She would once again, of course, reprise her role as Mitch Tennyson in Case Closed, Countdown to Heaven, the 2010 movie. Then also in 2010, Soul Eater, she'd be cast the English voice of Lisa. She would reprise her role as Panina in the Funimation's dub of the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood anime. She would then reprise her role once again as Mitch Tennyson in Case Closed, The Phantom of Baker Street movie. Okay, let me see what time it is. We're still making good time. She would come back in 2010 to reprise two roles in Dragon Ball Kai, being Chi-Chi and Mrs. Brief. Then also in 2010, she would be cast as the English voice of Rika Aragami in Corpse Princess. Then in Eden of the East, she would be cast as the English voice of Misai. In Birdie the Mighty Decode 02, she would be cast as the English voice of Takumi. In the Summer Wars movie, she would be cast as the English voice in the Funimation dub of the Summer Wars movie. She'd be cast as the English voice of Rika Chinochi. And then as we move into 2011, in Phantom Requiem for the Phantom, she'd be cast as the English voice of Kelly. In The Sacred Blacksmith, she would provide the English voice of Justina Albright. Then in the Monster Tale video game, she would be cast the English voice of Ethan. In the anime Ride Back, she would be cast the English voice of Kei Yoda. She would then reprise her role as Botan in Funimation's dub of the Yu Yu Hakusho Eizo Hakusho short, 2011. Then in Rosario Vampire Kapu 2, she'd be casting as voice of Shurara Shirayuki. Then also in 2011, in Heaven's Lost Property, she'd be cast as the English voice of Sahara's mother. Then in Bigata HK in 2012, she was cast the English voice of Misakai. She would then be cast in 2012 as the voice of Shieko, basically the house manager in Princess Jellyfish. She would be cast in the short, and then she would also be Shieko and Shiyoko in the anime. So there was a short and an anime she was involved in there. Then in the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood 4-panel comic theater short, she would reprise her role as Paulina. Also in 2012, in Shiki, she would be casting the voice of Nao Yasumori. Then in Freezing, she'd be cast as the English voice of the battle instructor, 2012. Okay, also in 2012, in the movie In the anime movie King of Thorn, she would be casting as voice of Mallory Bridge. Then in the Dead Man Wonderland OVA, she was cast as the English voice of Hinata Mukai. Then in Fafner Dead Aggressor Heaven and Earth movie, she was cast as the English voice of Yumiko Hino. Then in A Certain Magical Index, in 2012, she was cast as the English voice of the head resident. She would, of course, reprise her role as the head resident in A Certain Scientific Railgun. Basically, I'm guessing she would be the English voice of the head resident throughout all the certain franchise. So, A Certain Magical Index, Certain Scientific Railgun, she's a head resident. And then and that was in 2013 in as Scientific Railgun. Also in 2013, High School DxD, she was cast the English voice of Mira. Also in 2013, in Michiko and Hachin, she was cast the English voice of Joanna Belenbaza Yamada. Try saying that one 3 times fast. Then, as we move ahead to 2014, in the anime Space Dandy, she was cast as the English voice of Meow's mother. Then, in Attack on Titan, she was cast as English voice of Grisha's mother. Again, as I mentioned earlier, she gets a lot of maternal roles. A lot of Cynthia Cranz. It's like, yeah, you need a maternal figure. Just call on Cynthia. All right. So as we move ahead to 2014, she would reprise her role as a head resident in A Certain Scientific Railgun S. Then in The Devil is a Part Timer, she would provide the English voice of Miki Shiba. The and that one. In the Funimation dub of Ghost in the Shell Arai, she would be cast as the English voice of Yoko Kitahara. In Yurikima, then as we move into 2015, in Yurikima Arashi, she would be cast as the English voice of Rhea Subaki. Then in Maria the Virgin Witch, she would provide the English voice of Bon. I think it's Bonne. I don't know if that's pronounced Bon or Bonnie. I would think Bon, but I don't know why they'd forget the I. But then in Ping Pong the animation, she would be cast as the English voice of Emiko. Then in the movie Ghost in the Shell, the new movie, she would reprise her role as Yoko Kitahara. In Dragonair Academy, she would be cast as the English voice of Frida Shelley. Then, as we move into 2016, in Noreen, she would be cast as the English voice of Hisako Nakazawa. In Gonna Be the Twin Tail, she'd be cast as the English voice of Imu Shindo. In Puzzle and Dragons X, she's cast as the English voice of Sidonia. In Honda Kun, she'd be cast as Emi Honda, English voice of Emi Honda. She would, of course, she would apparently reprise her role as Emi Honda in Barakoman. Let's see. And Dragon Ball, well, we already know about that. And then as we move into 2017, of course, she would reprise her roles as Chi-Chi and Miss Briefs in Dragon Ball Super, as well as being cast as the English voice of Dilma in Chain Chronicle, The Light of Hycetis. In Valkyrie Drive Mermaid, she would be cast as the English voice of Torino Kazami. Then in Sakura Quest, she would be casting as voice of Masami Nunobe. Then as we move into 2018, in episode 11A of Pop Team Epic, she would be the English voice of Papimi. In Citra, she would be casting as the voice of Mineko Fuji. Then also in 2018, in Hina Matsuri, she'd be cast as the English voice of Nita's mother. In Shio School Road, she'd be cast as the English voice of Momo's homeroom teacher. In Ace Attorney Season 2, she'd be cast as the voice of Sister Bikini. Then in the 2019 Fruits Basket dub, she'd be cast as the English voice of Mitsuru. In the Borderlands 3 video game in 2019, she'd be cast as Hima. By the way, Ace Attorney, Chio, School Road, Hina Matsuri, Citrus, those are all, and Pop Team Epic were all done in 2018. She did those, casting those roles in 2018, so I kind of forgot to mention that. But as we're into 2019 now, see, also in 2019, in One Piece episode of East Blue, Luffy and his four friends' great adventure, he would reprise his roles as Onion and Belmere. Then as we move into 2020, of course, Chi-Chi again. And in a scientific railgun, in a certain scientific railgun T, she would reprise her role as a head resident. And then in City Hunter, Shinjuku Private Eyes movie, she would be cast as English voice of Ai's mother. Now, as I mentioned, basically in any of Funimation's dub of any of the Dragon Ball franchise, Cynthia basically was the English voice of Chi-Chi as well as Mrs. Briggs. I didn't go through every single one of them because that would get a little redundant after a while. Just know that in everything revolving around Funimation's dub of Dragon Ball, Cynthia Cranz provided the English voice of Chi-Chi and Mrs. Breeze, and maybe a couple other characters here and there, in specific, like she was Agent Mai in the one Dragon Ball Mystical Adventure. So, just know that. So, just in case you were wondering, well, why do you say all the Dragon Ball? Simply because it was been redundant. I think everybody knows that she was Chi-Chi in just about every. She was Chi-Chi in just about every Dragon Ball, as well as Mrs. Brief in the variations that had Mrs. Brief as part of the cast. So, with that being said, I hope you guys will find this information. You guys will find this information informative, getting to know more of Cynthia Cranz's work. As I said, there are basically two things you can take from when you look at over her credits. The most obvious is that she's for Funimation's does she's Chi-Chi throughout all the Dragon Ball franchise. She's Chi-Chi and Mrs. Briefs in the Dragon Ball franchise. Mrs. Briefs, just in case for those of you who don't know, Mrs. Briefs is Bulma's mother. So just in case you needed to be reminded of that. Bulma's mother is who we're talking about there. And of course that leads into the second point, being that at Funimation, the voice actress who gets called on the most to do maternal roles is Cynthia Cranz. She gets called in to do a lot of the more maternal roles. So with that, I hope you guys will check out her work. If you guys want to contact me directly, you can direct message me on my Discord. Check out the Discord and join if you'd like. Still, of course, promoting a bunch of dub companies, and I do promote the VAs from Funimation from the Dallas area who aren't involved in the whole Vic saga, just because they deserve to get attention for more positives like the work they do. Okay, so not everybody at Funimation is a jerk. Okay, there still are some good people there who are just going there every day to just do their job. Um, I'm still promoting Vic's GoFundMe as well as Tug and Lug's Indiegogo project. As always, guys, never feel like you have to donate. If you have the means to and it's on your heart to do so, please consider donating. If you cannot donate, actually, if you've already donated, please consider donating again. If it's on your heart to do so, please consider donating, as long as you have the means to, of course. And if you can't donate, then you can still help out the guys by sharing the link. And sharing is caring. You never know. Maybe somebody in your circle of friends may want to help out. Doesn't hurt to ask. And if you like this content, I please ask that you like, comment, share, and subscribe. I always look forward to the conversation with you guys as long as it's civil and respectful. I hope to catch you guys at the premiere of this on Friday. And and also don't forget this Sunday doing my next stream. So but if I don't see you guys over the weekend here, then I will see you on Monday. Bye.